right, for this lesson, we're going to take negative exponents just one step further, and we're actually going to evaluate a few. So let's just jump right into the examples. All right, it says evaluate. In other words, what does this equal? It says write your answer as a fraction or a whole number without any exponents. All right, so in the last lesson, we talked about what a negative exponent meant. So 4 to the negative 1/2 is really the same as 1 over 4 times 1 over 4. And then multiply fractions. 1 times 1 is 1. 4 over 4 is 16. So in IXL, you would type in 1/16, 1 over 16. So remember that negative exponent, you could rewrite this as 1 over 4 squared, which gives you the 1 over 4 times 1 over 4. All right, so let's do another one. Same, it just happens to be the same base, different exponent. So when you have a negative exponent, you move it to the other side of the fraction bar. You can think of it as just flipping it over, because technically all whole numbers are fractions if you put them over 1. So 4 over 1, if you flip that over, you get 1 over 4 to the 4th, which is the same as 1 over 4 times 1 over 4 times 1 over 4 times 1 over 4. 4 times 4 is 16. Times 4 is 64. Times 4 is 256. Yep. So that is 1 over 256. Now, if you type this in the calculator, you may end up with a decimal, and you're not going to be able to do that. So if you struggle with doing this, you could easily do, on your paper, when you're working it out, if you're working it out by hand, write it all out, and then you could multiply 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 in a calculator to get 256, and then type your answer in this way. Just be careful. You can type this in the calculator just like this, but you're going to get a decimal, and that's not what they're asking for. It says write it as a fraction. So be extra careful there. You could check your number by typing in 1 divided by whatever you get, and then type this in as if they're the same, but just be careful. All right, so what if you've given a fraction to a negative exponent? We haven't done one like this before, but remember in the last one, I didn't say this during the lesson for negative exponents, but think of it as if you have 2 to the negative 2, it's really the same as 2 to the negative 2 over 1, and you're flipping that over to become 1, 2 squared like that. You could do the same principle if you have a fraction. Now you can put this over 1, so you could say 1 and then move the whole thing underneath, 1/5 squared, and make that positive. This works exactly the same way. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you both ways. So we're just going to leave the 1 on top. We're not doing anything. 1/5 squared is the same as 1 over 5 times 1 over 5. And we end up with 1 over 25. So we have a whole number divided by a fraction. As a review for dividing by fractions, you invert and multiply. So this 1 on top becomes 1. The 1 over 25, if you invert it, becomes 25 over 1, which is 25. And 1 times 25 is 25. Okay, so if you need to write that down, I'll let you pause it to write that down, but I'm going to work it out a different way as well. So instead of moving all this to the bottom, what if we just flipped it over? So we know that a fraction is being raised to a negative power. Now this negative power is to the entire fraction. So notice the parentheses here. The whole fraction. This only works if you're doing the whole fraction. So because it's negative, I can flip it over. Now I have 5 over 1, still in parentheses, to the positive 2. 5 over 1 is the same thing as 5. 5 squared is 25. I personally think this way is easier. Well, maybe not easier per se, but fewer steps. But I wanted to show you that if you flipped it over, it still works. All right, let's look at another example. I picked a couple of them with the fractions just to make sure that we had a chance to do a few. It says write your answer as a fraction or whole number without exponents. So we're going to evaluate this. You could type this in the calculator. I don't think you'll get a decimal. You shouldn't anyway for this one, but it's a good way to check. Don't rely on the calculator but to do your work for you, but always use it as a backup. It can check. So again, we're raising a fraction to a negative power, so we're going to flip it over. So basically, we're just going to flip that fraction over. Now the whole thing is to the positive 1 power. And basically that means 8 over 1 times just one time, because it's just 1. And 8 over 1 is just 8. All right, I think I've got one more. Yes. All right, same thing. Make sure you read the instructions, just in case they ask you to do something different with your answer. All right, so we have a fraction. This time it's raised to the negative 2 power. So again, a fraction raised to a negative power. Keep in mind, it's got to be the whole fraction, not just the top. If it was just the top, if it was just 1 over 7, 1 to the negative 2 over 7, the 1 would go down, but not, the 7 wouldn't change. So make sure you understand that the parentheses are super important. So if you do put it in a calculator, it has to have it exactly like that. All right, so having said that, let's do the math. It's to negative power, so we're simply going to flip it over. And we're going to change the exponent to a positive. 7 over 1 is 7 squared. 7 times 7 is 49. Okay. Now, again, one last time. Why can we flip it over? Well, it's the same as if we moved it to the bottom. So if we moved it to the bottom, we would get 1 over 7 squared, which is 1 over 49. And then to divide a whole number by a fraction, we invert the fraction and multiply. So 49 over 1 becomes, 1 over 49 becomes 49 over 1. And 49 times 1 is still just 49. So that gives us the same answer.